Hello again. Now, this video is about a subject which a fellow sufferer has suggested to me that I make it into a video, and that's on the matter of people that have suffered from anxiety for a long time. And by a long time, I can mean in a lot of cases for years, and as someone who fits that description, I think I'm as qualified as anyone to talk about it. So it seemed a good idea because I know there are a great many people in this situation. Now, two questions immediately come to mind, and the first is, how can somebody remain in an anxiety state for years? What is the reason that they've stayed that way? And the main reason, obviously, is that they haven't been told how to recover. They haven't learned the way to recover. And the second question is, how come people like myself have remained in an anxiety state for a long time? Especially people like myself who already know about the cure and know what the cure involves. And the answer to that is quite simple, really. I've recovered as much as I was able to, as much as I was prepared to accept all the aspects of my anxiety state. If I had learned to totally accept everything that I was experiencing, I would have been cured by now. The fact is, I've been hung up on particular issues, which I shall talk about in a minute. And it is that has kept me in this state. Now, it's a very sad fact that since I've been doing these videos, I've come to see that very clearly, is that there are so many people out there who are in an anxiety state, and it's a complete mystery to them. They don't understand it, they don't know what to do about it, and the help, if you can call it that they get from the medical profession, in a great many cases just consists of medication. Now, that is all well and good, and obviously in many cases that will help them, but it does not tell them anything about their condition. And one of the reasons I wanted to do these videos in the first place was because in all the years I've been seeing doctors and medical professionals about my anxiety state, and in any of that time, not one has ever sat down with me and explained to me what an anxiety state is, what is actually going on. Everything I know about it has come from my own experience and from what I've learned. And it's a tragedy that the simple explanation is not given to somebody in an anxiety state. And so much suffering could be spared in people like that if they were simply told what was going on. And so this is what I'm doing now. This is what I would like to have been able to do in my early days of anxiety, is to have somebody tell me what was happening to me, and more to the point, tell me what I could do about it. So this is the video that I never saw in my youth. This is, the talk that I'm giving now is the sort of talk I would have liked to have heard when I was first suffering from anxiety. Now, the other thing, before I go into this, is that I've talked an awful lot about Claire Weeks and her method, and I've talked about it so much because I know with 100% certainty that it works. Now, I wouldn't go to all the trouble of doing these videos and telling you about this method if it didn't work. I know perfectly well it does work. It worked in a way, well, I say in a way, for me, the first time I was ill. But I've explained why I didn't recover properly in those days, when I was first ill. And I know a number of people that have recovered by using this method, quite a number. So I know it's a trustworthy set of techniques that you can use to get yourself out of an anxiety state. So I simply wouldn't do or talk about anything that I wasn't 100% sure of, because it would be grossly unfair and even cruel to give people false hopes, people in an anxiety state who are desperate for help. I wouldn't do that to anybody in that state. I would never do it. It's, you know, I know what it's like to be in that state, and I know so much time I've spent looking for quicker and easier routes to recovery. So I've stuck with this method because it's a proven method. Now, people that begin an anxiety state and stay in it for a long time, like I say, that so many of them just haven't been shown what they need to do to get out of it. They give medication and nothing else, just no explanation. And when they first hear of this method, method of recovery, their initial reaction might be, you know, this seems way too hard, far beyond my capabilities to do. And, you know, in fact, some might try it for a while and not get the sort of immediate results and then give up, look elsewhere. And this is why the internet alone abounds with people offering solutions to anxiety states. I have to say that some of those are based on Claire Weekes' principles, but there are an awful lot out there which don't offer any real help. They sound promising, but they don't actually work. And I've heard from other anxiety sufferers about such things. You know, and they've tried this and they've tried that, and every time they come back to this one way of dealing with it. So people can and do go on for months and years in this state because they're not told what to do about it. And the thing is, what needs to be remembered is, even if you have been in this state for years, there's nothing in your body or in your mind that has changed that's going to prevent you from getting better once you learn the right way to do it. And this is something people think, because the longer they go on in this state and the more depressed and hopeless they feel about it, the more unlikely it seems to them that they're ever going to recover. And in fact, that is amongst the many what-if questions that an anxiety sufferer has. One of the strongest ones is, what if I don't recover? I mean, that is a chilling question to ask yourself, because it's like you're condemning yourself to a life of this. You know, all that your life is going to consist of is this fear. And that's horrifying. It's a horrible, horrible thought to have. But it's inevitable for somebody who's been anxious for many years and has not found anything they could do about it. So, with these videos, and that's one of the things I aim to dispel, to show that anybody, regardless of their circumstances, regardless of how long they've been like this, anybody can recover. Now, I mentioned the other aspect of it, which is, you know, connected with myself and why I've been like this for so long. I should say, you know, even though since I had the first return of panic in 2003, which is nearly coming up to 12 years now, it's not been like this, you know, solid anxiety for 12 years. There have been times in between where I've recovered a bit. I wouldn't say fully recovered because the anxiety was there, but it was in the background. It was much less predominant than it is now. So, you know, it's not one long 12-year agonizing type of suffering that I've experienced. It's been, you know, ups and downs in that time. So, this is the thing that I need to mention is that, like I said, apart from the things I've talked about in my other videos, the main thing I need to mention in terms for, you know, with reference to long-term anxiety, is that I've found the symptoms that have bothered me most and the things that have kept me in an anxiety state, I've gradually worked my way through each of them, and I'm not completely free of them yet, for reasons I'll talk about in a minute, but there are notable successes, shall we say, I've made in coming through anxiety, which is, I'm quite pleased with myself for doing, and it's taken me quite a while to actually get to that point where I've actually come through them. Now, there's certain aspects to long-term anxiety suffering which I need to talk about, because they're very important features of this state. The first one of this is the sheer tiredness that accompanies this. And the longer you go on in this state, the more tired you become in every possible way. You become physically tired, physically exhausted through all the strong emotion you're experiencing. You become mentally tired, where you spend so much time trying to figure it all out, trying to work out what's going on, what to do about it. And your emotions get drained as well, because all this fear, it's like you have a kind of emotional battery, if you like, inside of you. And constant, repetitive, day after day after day fear drains that battery. So you end up in a state where you don't really feel anything much, apart from fear. You certainly don't feel the happier emotions, or if you do, they're very short-lived. In fact, you might reach a state where you just don't feel. You feel a kind of emptiness inside you. You feel a kind of numb feeling, a sort of deadened feeling. That is the feeling of depletion. It's sort of physical feeling of depletion. You feel it here, sort of in your middle, in your solar plexus area, where you feel things. You feel this kind of numbness here, just emptiness. And that is one of the long-term effects of being in an anxiety state, and goodness knows I've had plenty of that. It's not just the feeling you feel physically, it's in your mind as well. It's kind of defeated feeling, just despondent feeling, seriously depressed feeling, because you can't find a way out of this problem. So that is one of the long-term aspects. And the other thing, of course, is memory. Somebody who's been like this for years will have had so much time to get all these bad memories, to get all these unhappy memories, all the things that they've tried, all the things that they've failed at, all the times that they've suffered intense anxiety, panic attacks, or whatever it is they're suffering. They've got this great long history behind them of what seems to them is just total failure. Opportunities they may have had which they lost because of their anxiety. Relationships that have been wrecked because of anxiety. Just a general, it's like a big heavy weight that you're carrying around with you all the time, all full of regrets, full of, I wish I'd been able to do things differently kind of feeling. It's, I certainly know this, and there's been plenty of things about my past that I wish I could have done differently had I not suffered from all this anxiety. And I know for a fact I would have done differently. But, what can you do? It's in the past and you can't change it. But it doesn't deflect from the fact that you still carry this burden with you the whole time. You carry this dead weight of miserable memories which kind of demotivate you, because you're constantly reminded of them in your everyday life. All the things in your everyday life that remind you of past failures. It's there all the time. It's all around you all the time. And you just feel you don't stand a chance because of all this constant reminder of what happened in the past. The only way that this burden of memory is going to lift is by, once you start using this method to get better, you start to replace some of the bad memories with new memories of success, things you managed to do, and not things you failed at. And that is a progressive replacement, if you like, of all the old bad memories with a lot of new ones, of things that you were able to do. And this is what it's all about. This is what this method teaches you. It teaches you to build steadily on your successes by using this method and using the techniques. And It's not about being free of the symptoms of fear. That's another thing I should always make clear, is that a lot of people, when they think of getting better, of recovery, they imagine their life will be totally free of any fear. Now, fear is a very strong, very basic human emotion, so as long as you're alive, you're going to feel fear. So to try and obliterate it completely is just impossible. So what do? What you're aiming for, and this is what your expectation should be sort of aimed at, is to be free of the exaggerated feelings of fear. That is the problem. It's the grossly exaggerated and intense and frequent experience of exaggerated fear reactions. Not least of which is the panic attack, of course, which is the most extreme fear you can feel. So that is what you're aiming for, and this is what this method teaches you all about. It teaches you the process where you learn to desensitize your body so that your nervous system finally stands down and stops, running at red alert all the time. And you start to feel things in a more normal way, such as you've always had the rest of your life when you weren't in this state. So that is the goal. That's the aim. Now, the other thing, of course, is that it's something that I certainly experienced. This is a very important aspect to this long-term suffering. Is where a lot of people can and do still maintain their normal life as far as their anxiety will let them. In other words, they go to work or they're studying or whatever. They've got some sort of routine that they follow in spite of them being in an anxiety state. So at least there is that element of normality to their life in that they've got that. On the other hand, there's people, and I've certainly been like this myself, whose life doesn't offer those opportunities. In other words, their lives become just anxiety. This is all that they have. They have nothing else that's of any importance in their life apart from the anxiety state they're in. It becomes their life. So from waking to sleeping and in between as well, all that they think about is their anxiety. And as part of that kind of obsession with how they're feeling and the state they're in, there's it's a constant analysis going on. There's this trying to figure out what to do going on. I spent an awful long time in that state myself. I used to write a journal, and for about the last 15 years I've done it on and off. And I used to fill pages and pages of writing, trying to figure out what to do about the state I was in. Analysis, picking it apart, trying to find out reasons. I've reached a stage now where I realised that all of it was totally pointless and didn't achieve anything. All right, it used to get some of this sort of tension and frustration out of me just by writing about it, but it didn't actually solve anything. I didn't come to any amazing conclusions by trying to work it all out. It was just, pointless, really. So that, like I say, is something that many people can get into, where anxiety is all they have in their life, which kind of leads into another aspect of it, is that is the habit problem. I've talked about the fatigue, but there's also the habit problem that people suffer from in long-term anxiety. They are so habitually afraid. Every day of their life is something that frightens them, something that gives rise to fear feelings or fear thoughts within them. So you could say that in these circumstances, their whole life is just a habit of fear. They expect to have fear. They expect to feel fear, or feel it at some point in every day of their life. So if by some strange thing, one reason or another, they stop being afraid at any particular point on any day, that sudden absence of fear can actually be a cause of fear in itself, as stupid as that sounds. Because they think, why am I not afraid? What's going on? Why? Why has it stopped? And this is what I mean by the habit. They're so used to dealing with this fear every single day. And believe me, I know what this is like, this experience, that they actually go looking for it and think, well, something's wrong somewhere. I should be afraid. Why is it not happening? Indeed, if I think back to the very first time I was ill, I can remember at one point, and I don't really remember why it happened, but I can remember thinking, one day I was thinking, I'm not scared today. I'm not afraid. Why? And at that time, with my very, very limited knowledge and understanding of the anxiety state, I had this crazy idea that said, well, supposing my adrenal glands are not working properly, supposing there's something happened in my body. I'm sorry about this, it's just Mowgli the cat has come to join in. He likes to scratch things. Thank you, could do that. He just ignores me. What can you do? Yeah, thank you. Can't let myself talk here. Yes, he'll finish in a minute. Where was I? Yes, as I was saying before I was interrupted. Yes, back in those days when I had that sudden break from fear, and I thought, there's something must be physically wrong. Something has stopped producing adrenaline in me. My glands have failed or something. It was the most ridiculous, stupid thought I could have had. But such was the habit of fear I'd gotten into then. And the same applies even now sometimes. I mean, yesterday was a good example. Before I went out, every time I go out and do anything, there's always a certain amount of apprehension about what I'm going to do. And with that apprehension comes this kind of sorry about that. He keeps interrupting me. I lose the thread of what I'm saying. Yes, yesterday I said I was about to go out. Will you please stop scratching? Thank you. And I wasn't that scared. And normally, when I get to going out, every time I start to get apprehensive, then on comes a certain amount of this dizziness, which I keep on talking about. And yesterday, for some odd reason, I just didn't feel that. So I went out and got in the car, and immediately, going out there, unlocking my car and getting in, it's like the habit kind of went click, and it just clicked back in again, and off it went. So in that case, I'd almost deliberately gone looking for the fear. I just expected to feel what I always had felt and what I'd been feeling for a long time. And there it was, just like that. This is how it works. The habit is so strong. And obviously that begs the question, well, what do you do about this? What can you actually do to stop yourself acting in this kind of automatic way? How can you stop your nervous system from kind of switching on automatically? Well, there's nothing you can directly do to actually prevent that from happening. It's impossible to. You could try. This is going back to the old fighting idea that's gotten a sufferer into so much trouble is fighting how they feel. You're going back to basically trying to fight this habit. That won't work. It just can't work. You're just making it more intense by trying to fight it. So you simply have to go along with it. And this brings me on to what I was saying earlier about things that I've managed to overcome during the course of these years. And it's taken me a long time because of my own reluctance to do it. The most obvious of those things that I've overcome is panic attacks, which I described what I did in my other video. And that took me years. And in the early days when I first started getting panic attacks, I used to get them all the time, every day practically. I used to get them at night as well. I used to wake up with them. I hated the damn things. I just didn't know what to do. I was in such a state. And fortunately, I knew enough about, Claire Weeks and her teachings. I knew enough to stop it from getting too out of control. But the damage was done then. I got into that cycle, and it took me quite a few years before I finally plucked up the courage to face up to and surrender to the panic. And like I said, I talk about that on my other panic attacks video. But that in itself was a revelation to me, because it showed me what I needed to do with the other things that were in my life which are bothering me so much. For years, another good example, for years I suffered from constant headaches. Day after day I used to get these headaches. It used to be here, over my scalp, on one side or the other. Or my neck used to be like a vice. And the pain used to be so bad, I used to find myself reacting badly to the pain in itself. The pain was that severe. And what I used to do was to breathe too quickly. I used to hyperventilate. And the cycle used to continue. The more I breathed fast, the more the pain, my headache hurt, and so on. It used to go on and on. I used to spend whole days and whole nights sometimes like that. And as with panic, I got to a point where I used to think, well, what the hell am I supposed to do about this? I can't, I was sick and tired of it. It was just on and on. It never seemed to stop, never seemed to get better or anything. Finally, what I did was I thought, well, I didn't used to take aspirin-based painkillers because I couldn't tolerate them. So I tried another one. I tried paracetamol, which works. I didn't know, but I discovered it worked in a different way. So I tried these for a while, which I hadn't tried before because I assumed they were all the same. All the painkillers had this stomach irritant effect, like aspirin does. So I'd avoided them because I thought, well, it's bad enough having a bad headache. I don't want a bad stomach as well. However, I did. I tried a few of these paracetamol, and at first nothing much happened, but it was at that point I kind of broke the cycle. I began to break the cycle because I realized that the painkillers as themselves took the edge off the pain. They did make a slight difference, only a slight one. But the bulk of the reason that I started to get over these headaches was that I began to see them in a different way. I began to realize just how much I was feeding into these things, how much I was creating them myself, just as I had been with the panic attacks. I began to see very clearly that it was the cycle of pain I would put myself into. It was me doing it, and that notwithstanding the effects of the painkiller, it was mostly me and mostly my attitude that was the problem. And this is what I mean by things taking, it took me a long time, because it took me so long to get through that acceptance process for this particular problem. And eventually, I used to keep on with the paracetamol. They certainly did. Well, even if they didn't actually affect me physically that much, I used to believe they did, so it was kind of a placebo effect going on here as well. But the point was, I began to think, here at last, I can do something about it. And this is what, there's a question that people in long-term anxiety think so much. They think, what can I do about it? They want to do something take some action, do something positive that's really going to make a difference. And this is why they feel so helpless, because all the things they try to do just seem to make things worse, or things just stay the same. So those were two major things that I've come through, and up until, well, before I had the stroke I talked about last year, I used to get dizziness, slight dizziness sometimes, nothing significant. I used to get the occasional sort of few seconds of vertigo, and my head everything used to revolve around me, and that was usually on account of ear problems, like too much wax in my ear or something like that. But it didn't used to, bother me that much. Now, since I had my stroke and my eyesight, my eye movement was affected, balance has become a major issue. And in the weeks that followed my stroke, and I started to get myself sort of mobile again, my balance became, a central focus. It became an obsession almost. I was concentrating on it the whole time as I managed to get myself around. Now that was all right for a while, and it was strange because I knew what the stroke had done to my eye movement. I knew why the balance problem was happening. I was much more able to accept that and be almost philosophical about it, because I thought, well, as time goes on, my eyes will start to recover their normal movement. I should be able to keep the two of them together, look at things both directions without the image overlapping, which is what causes the dizziness. And I was kind of prepared to let time pass. That's exactly what I was going to say, is letting time pass. I was prepared to do that. And I thought, well, given a certain amount of time, there was no guarantee given me that I would regain proper use of my eyes again. In fact, they said it was a 50-50 chance, but I was willing to go along with it for the time being. Now, that was okay, and then things were pretty much the same for quite a while. But then, as had happened with the headaches, I started to become obsessive about this dizziness, this lightheaded feeling. I started to see it in a different way. Instead of being willing to let it be there because I understood the reasons for it, I started to worry about it. I started to make it worse by the worrying. I started to focus all my attention on it. I became hyper alert to everything that affected my balance, everything. And in recent months, especially as we've gone into winter, that focus has intensified even more. So from it being mostly when I was just walking about, that balance problems affected me most. Now I've started to worry about what I'm going to be like when I'm driving my car, which previously had never really been an issue. In fact, just earlier this year, in fact, I used to drive, I did a sort of a 70-mile round trip on the motorway back in the spring, and I managed that pretty well. But in recent months, I've started to get, like I say, I've got obsessive over it. Started to worry that there's something else going on that's causing this dizziness. Same old thing as has happened so many times before. So now I'm in the process. I'm going to work my way through this as I've done with the other long-term symptoms. And that means getting myself out, excuse me, getting myself out and about, doing the things that I'm reluctant to do because I fear, what's going to happen to my balance. And basically just getting myself to a point where I don't care anymore, where if I'm dizzy or not, it doesn't matter. That's easier said than done, because I'm not just talking about a kind of floaty, lightheaded feeling such as I used to get beforehand. This is, everything I do is affected by this, so that when I turn my head and I move my eyes, it's like the world around me just doesn't ever look steady. I can't sort of keep a steady view of anything because my eyes kind of lag in their movement sometimes still. And the more upset I become about it, obviously, the more intense it gets, because I add other features to it. By breathing too fast, that makes me lightheaded. I tense all my muscles up, my neck muscles especially, that makes me dizzy too. So once again, I'm faced with the prospect of going through a long-term symptom, treating it the right way, getting it in proportion, getting to a stage where I can do whatever it is I want to do, even if this feeling is there and I'm not going to care about it. You might think, well, you might think of your own situation, think of the thing that bothers you the most, and you think, how can I do that? Well, I've already described what I did with the other long-term symptoms, and that is what my plan is at the moment. I'm going to keep on doing it, keep on getting myself out and driving and doing anything else, and I'm just going to keep on until I finally reach that stage where I don't give a damn if it's there or not. And to me, that's the only way. So this is my excuse, if you like, for being in this anxiety state all these years. It's the time I've taken from just to come to terms and being prepared to totally accept all the other feelings that I've described. It's taken me a long time, and it's interesting that during that time there have been episodes where I've surprised myself at what I've been able to do in spite of how I've felt now. And as a result of doing more difficult things, I found my confidence has grown immeasurably just by doing it. For example, back in 2009, my mother-in-law sadly died in the spring, and later in the year I took it upon myself to do much of the house clearing for a house. And not only was I there doing the house clearance, I was actually doing the selling of the house as well. I did all the conveyancing myself. And during that time, there was a difference, because I was doing all this, and although I still had a certain number of anxiety problems, it was nothing like it had been previously. And I got all the way through to December, and the house was sold. And it was a pretty tough time to do it. It was a very, as you can imagine, it was very upsetting clearing out this house, which, I had so many memories associated with this house, her house. I used to go and meet my wife there for a long, long time. And it was very, very sad having to clear all this out, and, but there you are. It was done, and when I got to the end of it, I can remember, this was just before Christmas, about a week before Christmas, we finally did it. And one of the things I was tasked with doing, which hitherto used to scare the hell out of me, it was to go and do a long car drive. It was about 270 odd miles round trip. I used to go and pick up my daughter and her partner. I used to go, he lived in Yorkshire, so I used to go sort of halfway, and his dad used to bring him down and bring them both down, and we used to meet halfway, and I used to bring them back. And prior to that end of that year, I used to kind of dread doing this, because I used to find it so hard driving motorways for several hours at a stretch on busy, dangerous motorways. But on that occasion, I remember it was it was just before Christmas, and the day I was due to go, there was ice everywhere. Now, I went out just to see what the roads are like, and I remember testing my car out on the roads, and there was one of the local roads were covered in a sheet of ice, and I remember braking on one of them and sliding. And prior to all the house clearing I'd done, if that had happened to me, I would have sort of said, no, I'm not doing this, I'm not driving in this. But strangely enough, because of all the confidence I gained from the house clearance and the house selling, I sort of thought, well, if I'm careful, I should be all right. And off I went, and I drove all the way up to, past London on the dreadful M25, if any of you in this country know about it. Terrible road. I drove along that, and I didn't really think anything of it. It was kind of, I was kind of calm the whole way, in spite of everywhere there was snow and ice, and it was freezing cold as well. I gained so much confidence by doing stuff that I didn't think I was capable of doing. And that has been a feature of these past 12 years. It's been sometimes not having anything much happening. Other times there's been things happening, things that I've done, which has alleviated some of my anxiety symptoms. Another thing was I started a little IT business back in 2004, which for a few years at least I managed to keep me quite busy with. But that's another thing I should mention about the people who do recover, and especially those who have been in it for a long time. Those who recover, and those that I know, they always seem to have a strong sense of purpose. It was like they had something, or they developed something in their mind which gave them a reason to get better. They had a real purpose to their recovery. They wanted to do something which their anxiety was stopping them from doing. So they committed themselves to using Claire Weeks' method, and they recovered. And they went on to do the things that they wanted to do, which, that was their purpose. Now, in a sense, what I'm doing here with these videos has become my purpose. What I've considered lost years of my life, which have gone to anxiety, and like I said earlier in this recording, there's so much regret, so many miserable memories. I thought, well, I've had all these years of it for some purpose. I've got to try and give some meaning to all this suffering. Try and give it a purpose, for actually being there. And I thought, well, I've got all this knowledge, I've got all this experience, so I can use it. I can help other people understand their own anxiety state, hopefully. I can give them tips and advice from the things I've learned. And suddenly there was a purpose for me then. I thought, this is what I want to do. This is what I like doing. I really enjoy doing this. I love to try and help people. So in a funny roundabout way, this has become my reason to recover, even though I'm talking about it all the time on these videos. It's given me, like I said earlier, it's given me a talk, which is the kind of talk I wanted to hear in my earliest days of anxiety. It's me reminding myself too of all the things that I know about anxiety and all the things I know about recovering from it. So it's reinforcing my own understanding all the time by talking to you about it. So I think this has covered pretty much what I wanted to say on long-term anxiety. There's a lot more I could talk about. No doubt I will think of other areas that I want to cover in the future. I'll give myself a little crib sheet when I do these videos so I can remember to talk about certain things, but it doesn't always work. Memory like I've got. So I think that's, like I said, pretty much covered it for now. So there you are, Brian. It was Brian who asked me to do this video, so there you are. I hope at least answers some of your questions, and if you think of anything else, I'll do further videos about it. But anyway, to conclude, before I go off waffling as I do, it doesn't matter if you've been in this state for years and years. If you decide to use this Claire Weeks method If you really fully commit yourself to doing it, then it doesn't matter a damn if you've been ill for 50 years, you can still recover. You can still get out of it. And throughout all these years, I never ever lost faith. And I thought, well, during my darkest hours, and there's been plenty of those, I've kind of lost hope temporarily. But every time I come back and I think, I know this will work. I know it will work. So at the moment, I'm still working through my present issues. But I'm going to get there. I swear I am. I don't care how long it takes me. So this is the kind of determination that you need. You've got to keep on telling yourself. If you're new to this technique, these techniques, if you're new to this idea of how to recover, you're going to have to take a lot of trust for the time being. But if you keep at it, you keep practicing it, you'll start to get your own experience of the way it works. You'll begin to see how it affects your anxiety symptoms. It affects them for the better. And that is when you really begin to put your faith in them, because you've seen success. And all those miserable memories I talked about earlier, you start to get new and important, new, successful memories. And you begin to regain hope. You begin to get hope in the future. And that's the one thing that's been missing for so long, if you're in years, have been suffering years like this, is hope. And belief that you have a future that's worth living. And believe you me, if you know of the stories of the people that I know that have cured themselves this way, and the lives they've gone on to lead, well, it's heartwarming, really is heartwarming. Anyway, I think I'd better stop now before I just talk even more waffle than I normally do. But please don't ever lose hope. This way will definitely work for you. It's worked for many others, and it's working for me. So please give it a try. And if I think of anything else on this particular subject, I will do another video. But in the meantime, I better stop now. And thank you very much, as always, for watching my videos. I do appreciate it. I appreciate all your comments too. So for now, keep on practicing, and I'll talk to you next time.